Well, what is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, well, I'm going to kind of talk about the future of this franchise and where the New York Giants may be headed off of this. I'll probably go live tomorrow or the day after. I kind of want to take a break from the live streams, knowing that we're going to have a lot of therapy sessions probably going forward based off the state of this franchise. And I'm getting sick and tired of expressing patience. But the New York Giants now off to a 1-4 start, but it wasn't the fact that we lost. I expected us to lose going into that game. I think what really took the wind out of our sails off of yesterday's game was the fact that the New York Giants are now decimated with injuries. And obviously the defense didn't play great, but I'm not going to kill the defense for the year I'm gonna. I think Patrick Graham has not done a good job. I don't think he's built off of last year's performance in terms of the overall defense. But yesterday, the defense didn't have a chance. We couldn't establish a run game. The Dallas Cowboys completely dominated the time of possession. We knew going in that the best defense going up against an offense like that was going to be the New York Giants offense, keeping the ball out of the Dallas Cowboys' hands. And obviously, after we sustained all the injuries that we did, there was a snowball's chance in hell of that happening. But obviously, the negative of yesterday, more so than just the loss, was how deflating it is in terms of all the injuries that the New York Giants have sustained. And even before this game, you take a look at it. Shane Lemieux was supposed to be our starting left guard, out for the year. Nick Gates was supposed to be our starting center, out for the year. Andrew Thomas has a foot injury, much like he did last year. I think it's a different type of injury, but regardless, looks to be like it could be somewhat reoccurring. Who knows that? Hopefully that will not be the case, because he was great his first 4 games, and hopefully the Giants could get him back out on the field sooner than later. He was hurt before the game started. Jabril Peppers was hurt before the game started. Sterling Shepard was hurt before the game started. And the same can be said for Darius Slayton. But of course, in the game, you've got Daniel Jones, the quarterback, goes out with a concussion. He's now missed time each of his first 3 years in the NFL. And I think as fans, that was one aspect of Eli Manning that we certainly took for granted. Eli Manning played every single game, did not miss a game throughout his entire career due to injury, and that's abnormal. I don't expect that from Daniel Jones, but obviously it's discouraging that the guy continues to miss time, and it's something that the New York Giants will have to at least consider when they decide whether or not this guy's going to be a part of the long-term plans of this football team. It wasn't his fault in terms of the play call. They were on the 1-yard line. He's going to fight to try to score that touchdown. It was just an unfortunate event, but that's something that Jones definitely needs to work on. He can't continue to take hits like that. I'm not saying on the one. In that circumstance, it's understandable, but he does it at midfield. He needs to learn how to slide. He needs to learn how to avoid contact. Otherwise, this is going to be a recurring theme. And concussions are not a joke. He's now been hurt 3 times. All 3 times were when he was trying to run with the football. Once against Green Bay, once against Cincinnati, and once again yesterday. And we'll see how Daniel Jones responds from this, but it's not going to be easy, especially if Andrew Thomas is not in the lineup. On top of that, Kenny Golladay went out with a knee injury, and Saquon Barkley went out with a sprained ankle that looks like it's the size of a grapefruit. Now, reports have come out that it's a lower ankle sprain, and we'll see if he's going to be himself throughout the rest of this season. But obviously, the New York Giants were slammed with the injury bug. And it makes you question, what's the future of this team? Going into the year, I think we all agreed that Dave Gettleman needed to see progress from this team if we were going to stay on the path of continuing to try to build with him as the general manager. And at this point, with all the injuries the New York Giants have had and the upcoming schedule that the New York Giants have, and I pray I'm wrong. I hope the New York Giants go out there, win 9-10 games, make the playoffs, and we sing Kumbaya at the end of the year. But I got to be realistic, based off our upcoming schedule, based off the injuries we've sustained, based off of the lack of good play from the defense, something we were counting on going into the year, which I'm going to continue to say needs to be harped on. Patrick Graham has not done a great job there. I mean, Gettleman more than likely will not be back. And then the question becomes, well, what is the direction? What is the forward direction of this football team? And we're going to go over next year's salary cap and some of the decisions that I guess the New York Giants are going to have to make. But it's going to be hard to do a complete rebuild when you look at some of the money that's committed to some of these players. Now, the Giants elected to do that in 2019, not in 18. They tried to go half and half. In 19, they did, and they traded away all their talent. And that is what you would end up doing if you're looking to do a complete rebuild and bring in somebody from the outside. And that's something that we're going to have to, at least acknowledge as a possibility by season's end. The Giants will have to decide whether or not they're going to push forward with guys like Daniel Jones and Joe Judge as the head coach, and potentially hire somebody from within or completely blow it up. And, we'll see at the end of the year. But obviously with all these injuries, the fact Barkley now can't stay on the field, Jones can't stay on the field, it leads you to believe that the Giants may have to reassess themselves as an organization and think about potentially blowing this up again, which to me is incredibly discouraging, and I'm hoping that will not be the case. I don't want to have to go through another year or two of, no hope going into a season in terms of competing for the playoffs, but it may be by year's end what the Giants decide to do. And as a fan, I don't know how you could really dispute that based off the production we've gotten over the last 4 years with the Dave Gettleman regime. If it's not working, sometimes you got to start over. In terms of the good news with the New York Giants yesterday, I mean, it starts with Matt Parrott, right? And it makes you think, why hasn't Matt Parrott been in this lineup? Now, Joe Judge, I do think came out and said that Matt Parrott he didn't feel like was ready. Regardless, he played yesterday. He looked much better than Nate Solder. Granted, he was on the right side. Solder was on the left. Solder was giving up constant pressure. I think he had a grade of 38. Parrott was, I think, the second highest grade of any player on the New York Giants. I think he only surrendered one pressure, and he needs to be part of this New York Giants line going forward, if nothing else, to be able to assess our future and find out whether or not Matt Parrott is going to be a part of the starting offensive line for this New York Giants football team. He has not really gotten an opportunity to get steady work with this offensive line, and if the Giants feel like he's ready, and yesterday he looked like he could be, put him in there. Just put him in there. Whether or not that means, once Andrew Thomas comes back, you play him on the right side. I don't know if you put him on the left side until Andrew Thomas is ready to come back. But once Thomas is back, I don't expect to see Nate Solder in the starting lineup. The Giants need to face the facts. They have to look at the injuries that they have. They have to look at their upcoming schedule and realize we have to start to assess some of our younger talent to figure out who could potentially be core pieces of this team going forward. And it looks to me, at least, that Matt Parrott is worthy of at least finding out whether or not he could be. Of course, the other big news yesterday, and I'm sick, by the way, of moral victories. It's been a laundry list of moral victories since I've been on YouTube, so I'm not going to hype this guy up and act like I'm incredibly happy because Matt Parrott and Kadarius Toney had incredible games, because what I care about at this point in time is real victories and getting this team to where they need to be. Now, Toney definitely looks like a guy that if we could get a good team, could definitely be a part of a winning football team for the New York Giants. You saw some of the moves that he made, and he's definitely explosive at 189 yards through the air, and they used him finally in the Wildcat, and definitely looks to be a very encouraging piece and a very good pick by the New York Giants at 20th overall. Of course, he had the fight at the end. It was kind of in the heat of the moment. Obviously, you have to learn as a young player, you can't be throwing punches. Not a good look for him or the New York Giants football team. Joe Judge, I don't know, a lot of people are coming on Joe Judge in terms of the way that he reacted, and he probably should have left that for the locker room. It's not a good look on the football field, cursing out your player, or at least that's the way it was interpreted by a lot of New York Giants fans from the lip reading. Not a good look. He talks about having control. It doesn't look like he had a lot of control on the football field either. But yesterday, I'm not going to put this game on Joe Judge. This year, that's another story. I definitely question a lot of the things that Joe Judge has done, even in the win. But yesterday, he didn't have a puncher's chance. I mean, you take any coach, you take away his quarterback, you take away his left tackle, you take away his two best weapons going into the game on the road against a better opponent, you're usually not going to compete or win in those football games. I actually thought that the team fought relatively hard for Joe Judge, but that does not mean that Joe Judge should be excused of any responsibility for why the New York Giants are where they are. Joe Judge has a lot to do with it. He was just as responsible over the last 2 years for building this football team as Gettleman was. We all know that the coaching staff outside of Garrett, who's been the punching bag by this fan base now for a long time, was built by Judge. The coaching staff was built by Judge. I think we all agree that he had a lot of input in terms of the players that the New York Giants brought in, which but really the crux of this video and what I want to talk about is what is going to be the plan going forward in terms of this team. Are we going to start completely over? Because I think what fans need to realize who are clamoring for that, and I'm not saying you're wrong for feeling the way that you do. If you're asking for that, you're going to see me on YouTube again for the next 2 years being like, patience. They're blowing this up. They're trying to build their team all over again, much like we did in the infancy stages with Dave Gettleman. And this team will not be a competitive football team for a few years. But when you really look at the salary cap of this team and you look at how it's constructed and how much the New York Giants spent, is that the way in which they're going to go? And is John Mara going to be able to tell the fan base that? I don't know. I don't know if John Mara could go to the fan base based off how poorly this team is played and the fact that he comes out and says he expects this team to compete and then essentially tell the fan base, yeah, we're blowing it all up again and you guys are going to have to wait another 2 years before this team even has an opportunity to be a competitive football team. And I think that will be the question that they will be asked at the end of the year. But when you look at our salary caps going into next season, I'll expand this further so you guys could see it in terms of the player commitments that we have. I mean, these guys are going to be on this football team. You could say you should trade these players. Nobody's trading for Leonard Williams based off the contract that he's making. He's due $26.5 million next year due to the fact that we had to backload it to keep, due to the salary cap. I think it was a 3-year contract, and even when we cut him the next year, it's a pretty big salary cap hit. The same can be said for Kenny Golladay. He's $23.6 million in terms of a dead cap hit next year, or pay him $21.1. So just between those two players alone, you're talking $37 million of a $208 million salary cap, or at least that's the estimate. Bradbury could save you money at 13.5, or maybe you could possibly trade him. But based off the way Bradbury's playing, I don't think any team's going to be looking to bring in James Bradbury with a $20.5 million commitment next year, looking as if, at least right now, he's not near the player he was last year. And yeah, you could cut him to save $13.5 million, but I don't know if that's the route that they're going to take. If they do, maybe they do that. Solder probably, obviously, will not be back. Adoree Jackson, another guy that's absolutely going to be here at $15.5 million with an $18.5 million dead cap hit. So just between those three players, Leonard Williams, Kenny Golladay, and Adoree Jackson, you're talking about a commitment of $61 million. Blake Martinez, good chance he'll be cut coming off the injury. We'll see. He's due $14 million with a $5.5 million dead cap hit. Sterling Shepard, I think, will be back. I think we've agreed with that due to the fact that the New York Giants backloaded his salary and made it even more to cut him in the following year. So that's another $12.5 million. Logan Ryan, you absolutely cannot cut based on his dead cap hit. That's another $12.2. So, you're talking close to $100 million committed to these 5 or 6 or 7 free agents that the New York Giants brought in last year that are really untradeable, and you're not going to be able to cut them. So it leads me to believe, at least right now, analyzing this team and where they are at as an organization, I don't think, maybe you bring in a new GM, but first off, is it a very attractive destination for a new GM? I know we have 2 first-round picks, but he has to accept all those contracts, and maybe they elect to do that. But even if we bring in a new GM from the outside, I'm not talking about from within inside the organization, I don't see how he's going to be able to move those contracts, at least before the year starts, which leads me to believe with all those high-paid contracts on this team and players looking to compete right now, you're not talking about young talent. I think the New York Giants are going to be in a very tough situation on deciding whether or not to rebuild or push forward with this team next year, and it's not a good spot to be in as an organization, and a lot of it is unfortunate. You can't predict injuries. There's no way you could have predicted the Saquon Barkley ankle sprain or Daniel Jones getting the concussion. It's part of the game. But you could definitely point to the fact that the New York Giants don't have a lot of depth on this football team. Their backup running back, Devontae Booker, is nothing. We let Wayne Gallman walk. That's another questionable decision. And the defense, to me, has been by far the most disappointing aspect of this football team. Listen, guys, I hate to be negative. I want to come on here and sing this team's praises week after week after week after week and tell you guys that I have a lot of hope for the future. Right now, it's kind of just a wait-and-see approach for me at 1-4. I'm not completely giving up on the season. I'm a fan at the end of the day. But if you're playing the Rams and you're missing 8 of your 11 initial starters on offense, good luck beating that football team. Hopefully some of these guys get back healthy. Hopefully Jones could play. I would guess he will not. And hopefully Andrew Thomas could play. But if we drop to 1-5 and you're staring the Chiefs and the Bucs in the face for 2 out of your next 4 games, realistically speaking, even if you win the other 2, you're looking at 3-7 with a best case scenario maybe of 7 wins by year's end. And at that point, what are you going to do if you're the New York Giants? And I guess, it's something we're going to have to wait on and see what they're going to do by season's end. As far as the playoffs go, let's be real as Giants fans. It's not looking peachy. Had there not been any injuries yesterday and the Giants were competitive and lost, I would have been able to sell myself on the fact that maybe we could compete with the Rams and be able to steal a win and get to 2-4, and we'll see where it goes from there. With how decimated this team is with injuries, they are going to need a prayer amongst prayers to get that win against the LA Rams. But we'll see how it all plays out. Right now, the state of the franchise, I don't think anybody knows where the New York Giants are headed. Will it be a complete rebuild? Will it just be a hire from within and trying to push forward with some of the younger players on this roster? A week ago, I think we all felt a lot better about Daniel Jones and Andrew Thomas and Kadarius Toney, who we still obviously feel very good about. And maybe we felt like if these guys could stay healthy, we could build a good football team. But you look at the defense. Where is the young emerging talent on this defense? Where is it? Jabril Peppers is injured. He's going to be gone next year. Logan Ryan is not young. He's not improving as a football player. He's a good veteran presence and a guy that will definitely be here next year. McKinney, I guess, is okay. Ojulari is pretty good, but he's not a guy that I think is game-changing. Dexter Lawrence, same thing. But outside of that, where is your young emerging talent? So The Giants still have a lot of holes to fill, and they need to continue to build this roster. The question is, are they going to build it from the ground up, or are they going to try to build with the pieces that they already have in place? And my guess would be, I think you're going to see another year by year's end, and this is just the way I feel right now. I think you'll see another year of trying to build off of this roster regardless of who the general manager will be going into next season, just due to the fact that I don't think they're going to have much of a choice based on some of the contracts that these players have. I can't even imagine what the state of the locker room would be next year if they decided to bring in a rookie quarterback and they started over completely from scratch, but that could be where we're headed, and sometimes in the NFL as fans, you have to realize that that's the best course of action. I hope it doesn't come to that point. I hope this team turns it around, but things are not looking good right now for the New York Giants. The only thing that we have to hang our hat on, much like the last 3 or 4 years, are moral victories, like Kadarius Toney and like Matt Barrett yesterday. I'm getting sick of moral victories. I want real W's. And hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, the New York Giants get back to their winning ways. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.